I am so happy, as always, to open with a great lady, which I'm very happy and honored to call my friend, Daniela Bas, Director of the Division for Inclusive Social Development at the United Nations, UNDESA. Daniela will describe goals for this decade, advancing to 2030 in the field of inclusive employment. Daniela, please.
Thank you very much, Michal, and good afternoon, good morning, good evening to everyone. I feel at home since I work at the United Nations. The world is my home, so it's nice to see that there are so many people from all over the world attending also this webinar. Congratulations. And of course, I'm honored to be virtually invited by Access Israel, with whom the relationship professionally has been growing throughout the years. And also the pleasure of having, known Michal and many, many others of Access Israel. Now, as you know, the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, called the CRPD, states that persons with disabilities have the right to work on an equal basis with others. In fact, I would prefer to talk about equity more than equality, because the two things are very different. But today, I want to dig into that. But everyone has the right to work on an equal basis with others. Doesn't matter the age, the sex, the ethnicity, the ability or disability. And to have access to the support is very important. And this is what CRPD tries to do. And however, we know that the reality that persons with disabilities face is still filled with barriers when it comes to employment. And by the way, on the background of my face, for those who cannot see clearly, there is the background, the picture of the United Nations building in New York with flagships, with the various flags of the various countries. As for me, I won't describe myself, just imagine the prettiest lady of the world with the grayish blue, green eyes, depending on my mood, short hair in my early 60s. Now, I'll go on talking about the 2030 Agenda now, and that's another instrument, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and its 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And this agenda provides a shared blueprint for peace, yes, and prosperity for people and the planet, now and also in the future. I'm mentioning this because among these various Sustainable Development Goals, there are two that are key for this for today. One is the SDG 8, and I think we can show maybe a table in which it's an infographic where you can see in colors. Maybe there is another slide that can be shown there. With an infographic, if possible. In any case, yes, that's it. Thank you. So this is a slide where one can see put in boxes the various SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, and how they are connected to each other. There are 4 or 5 that mention explicitly persons with disabilities, and then there are also targets within the various SDGs that talk about persons with disabilities. So we can see how SDG 8 is interconnected with others, meaning that progress in one area often depends on the progress on other areas. So SDG 8, the Sustainable Development Goal 8, is about decent work and economic growth. And it is particularly relevant to employment of persons with disabilities. And Goal 8, Target Point 5, the target aims to, by 2030, achieve full and productive employment and decent work for all, women and men, including for young people, persons with disabilities, and equal pay for work of equal value. So to achieve this goal, we need also to address SDG 10, that is to reduce inequalities by removing, for example, the barriers that persons with disabilities still face in the workforce. and the negative attitudes and stereotypes about persons with disabilities, and allow me to say sometimes also lack of self-confidence of persons with disabilities themselves. And I know what I'm talking about. I'm paraplegic. I'm using a wheelchair since I was 6 years old. So we also have to contribute to our own self-esteem and self-confidence. Thank you for the slides. We can remove them now. So we needed to increase accessibility in the workplace by providing accessible infrastructures such as ramps, elevators, braille, sign language, as well as by ensuring that information and communication technologies are accessible to persons with disabilities. We also need to provide a training and educational opportunities, including vocational training and internships, to equip persons with different kinds of disabilities, either they're physical, sensory, cognitive, or invisible, with the skills and knowledge they need or wish to specialize to in order to enter in and succeed in the workforce. We have different talents, different skills, different interests. Now, Michael mentioned the ILO, the International Labour Organization, and it estimates that persons with disabilities are twice as likely to be unemployed as persons without disabilities, and that global unemployment rate for persons with disabilities is around 70%, compared to the global unemployment rate of about 5% for persons without disabilities. So you can also find very useful, actually, data in the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs 2018 Secretary General report on disability and development. And I also wish to anticipate that we are going in UNDESA to issue in this year, in 2023, an updated version of that annex. Now, a few examples before I conclude. A few examples of good practices on how employment can reduce inequalities for persons with disabilities. I think of accessibility in the workplace. I just mentioned it. For example, Microsoft made a commitment to make its products and services more accessible to persons with disabilities, including through the use of assistive technologies, such as screen readers and magnifiers. I won't mention Google. Google is doing lots of work, and I'm sure that there will be someone from Google then later on to explain what Google is doing. Accommodation and support, I mentioned, is key, and Dell provides assistive technology, job accommodation, training for employees with disabilities. We also know that inclusive hiring practices are very important to ensure that persons with disabilities are represented in their workforce. And here comes to my mind Ernst & Young, that had as a goal to hire 5% of its workforce from the disability community by the year 2020. Unfortunately, I don't have data if this little wonder or big wonder has happened. However, training and education provide incredible opportunity for persons with disabilities, like Accenture, with an initiative to provide a training and mentoring to persons with disabilities to help them enter the technology field. Partnerships and collaboration. This is what's happening right now. So when it comes to companies and when they're partnering with organizations that support persons with disabilities, this increases employment opportunities. And then supportive policies and laws. And this is where I'm at home. Governments. Governments can also play a role. They have to play a role in reducing inequalities for persons with disabilities by implementing supportive policies and laws. I mentioned the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. I mentioned the 2030 Agenda with its Sustainable Development Goals. But then each country has its own internal domestic laws. Let me give you the example of the United Kingdom that has implemented the Equality Act, which requires employers to make reasonable adjustments for employees with disabilities. And I started by saying, I live in the world in a way by working at the United Nations. So what is the United Nations doing? Well, besides the tools I just mentioned, in the year 2019, the United Nations Secretary General launched the United Nations Disability Inclusion Strategy, UNDESA, which is a comprehensive approach to promoting the rights of persons with disabilities and ensuring their inclusion in all aspects of the United Nations work. So in conclusion, in practical terms, SDG 8, decent work and economic growth, and SDG 10, reduced inequalities, are aimed at promoting greater inclusion and equal opportunities for persons with disabilities, and therefore reducing the disparities that they still often face. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Always great to hear and put everything in perspective. So thank you, Daniela, very much, and looking forward to seeing you soon.